Okay, continuing on with the lesson. Up above, we talked about getting the inverse. Now we're going to be talking about revisiting this word composition. Remember when that was f? Sometimes it looks like this, f with a little open circle, g of x. And of course, that means the same thing as g f of x, or that means the same as f of g of x. So those are interchangeable. When we're doing this problem, we don't have a number to plug in this time. So it makes it a little bit more challenging, but it's actually, you're not doing any computation because of that. So when I want to do g of f of x, the first thing I want to do is I want to rewrite this. Since f of x is x squared minus 5, then I want to replace that expression f of x with x squared minus 5. So that's going to be equal to g of x squared minus 5. All right, our second step is to then go into the g function and substitute that x with the x squared minus 5. So think about it like this. G of x is equal to 6x. So g of x squared minus 5 is equal to 6x squared minus 5. We replace this x with the expression from the other function. So at this, replace that. That's going to go into here. The x changes to x squared minus 5. And at that point, we can simplify it. So we can distribute if we need to. So in this case, it's going to be 6x squared. 6 times negative 5 is negative 30. And that is your answer. So g of f of x is 6x squared minus 30. And if you work backwards, then the 6x would get plugged in for the x. Hey, let me do that one real quick so you can see the difference. You can put that over here if you want. So if I wanted to do f of g of x, then what I'm going to do is f of, since g of x is 6x, so since f of x is x squared minus 5, then f of 6x equals 6x squared minus 5. And since the 6 and the x are both in the parentheses, we square them both. And so that's going to be 36. 6 squared is 36, x squared minus 5. So that's not officially the answer to part D, but you can see that when you do them the opposite way, they're not going to give you the same answer. If they did give you the same answer, well, then we'll talk about what that means in a little bit. Okay, on to the next page. We're going to do more of this, just a couple more examples so you can see. So in this case, I have f of x equals x squared, g of x is 3x plus 1, and I want to know f of g of x, and that is f parentheses g parentheses x. And we don't have a number to plug in, so we have to do this manually. But I want to know what is f of g of x. Since g of x is 3x plus 1, we are plugging that in for the stuff inside the parentheses after f. So I want to know what is f of 3x plus 1. What I'm doing again is I'm replacing the x in x squared with 3x plus 1. So since f of x is x squared, f of 3x plus 1 equals 3x plus 1 squared. And that's technically your answer, but we can simplify that. So in this case, 3x plus 1 squared you can do a little box method if you need to. 3 times 3 is 9. X times x is x squared. 3x times 1 is 3x. 3x times 1 is 3x. and 1 times 1 is 1. So that's actually going to simplify to 9x squared plus 6x plus 1. And finally, the last two we want to find, in this case, square root of x and x squared. F of h of x is going to mean that I'm going to plug h of x in for f, or in for the x for f. So since h of x is x, the square root of x, that's going to substitute in here. So f of x equals x squared. F of h of x is equal to f of the square root of x, since h of x is the square root of x. And we're replacing that with the x here. So this is going to be the square root of x squared. The square root of x is h of x, and then I'm squaring it to put it into the f of x. And we talked about what a square root and a square do to each other. They're actually inverse operations. So when I cross those out, well, I'm only left with x. So my final answer is going to be x. Now that's a good segue into what we're going to be doing next. So hopefully we'll talk about that in the next video. But what you want to do now is take a few minutes and practice 7 through 12 out. You can check your answers with the teacher, with me, and we'll see if you're on the right track, and then we'll move on to part 4. Thanks for watching.